Welcome everybody back to the channel, and it is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show money-taking, the man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying YouTuber in all of YouTube entertainment. And first off, I want to say thank you for everybody who watched my non-spoiler review of this. I got a lot of good responses, some good feedback. So now, after having seen the movie, and keep in mind, I saw this movie a week ahead of time. So this spoiler review is kind of a long-awaited thing for me, but for you guys, just know, hey, what's up, damn it, Mandy? Good to see you here. Just know this review is going to spoil this movie. I have my banner up, but I figure it's always good because someone clicks on the video and they go, oh, you spoiled the movie for me. So if you have not seen Weapons, you can go check out my non-spoiler review in the movies playlist. This will be in there later for you to enjoy after you've seen this movie. But if you don't know what this movie is about and you want to kind of get the full breakdown, because I will be breaking this down. It may be a bit of a longer stream, and I'm going to break down scene by scene the different imagery. Then I would probably suggest waiting to see this before you check out this review. Damn it, because I don't want to spoil it for you. So, but yeah, this is going to be a complete breakdown of the new 2025 film Weapons. So, Weapons, what is this movie about? What is going on? And for this, I feel like when you get into spoilers, I'm going to do a breakdown of a good majority of this movie. But when I break this movie down, I'm going to have to work backwards for me to kind of talk about the different scenes that go to what this thing is that is inflicting the town. So once again, everybody joining, everybody who would be in here, all of this stuff. If you haven't seen the movie, go see the movie, come back and see it. Yes, this is a horror mystery. I'd say more of a mystery, thriller, vaguely horror. There's horror elements, but it plays out like a mystery that's a horror. Anyways, I'm going to be revealing what the thing is first. And I know that's kind of weird for a breakdown, but I think the good point to start off is I want to talk about what this thing is about, because then I can go through the scenes and give you guys clues, because I've been online and looking at the buzz and seeing people who've already seen the movie. And some people are confused or they don't understand how each image in this movie plays in. And I want to just say, Zach Cregger does a great job, in my opinion, of weaving slowly the information that we're getting throughout this movie. And so it's important to kind of draw from different things. Now, I want to put out something. When I was a younger lad, and this personal information is very important to this overall review because it deals with a subject that I am actually familiar with. So when I was a younger lad, I was kind of exploring different religions, different things like that. I landed on Christian. Don't judge anybody if you're not. Really don't care. That's just my personal preference. I still see movies like this and all that stuff. But this lays down kind of my context for this. I dabbled into the Wiccan arts, all sorts of other stuff. Hey, Keely, I'm doing a spoiler review on Weapons. So if you haven't seen this, this is my full spoiler breakdown. If you have seen it, you can stay and chill. If you haven't, go watch the film, come back. I'm breaking it down. If you have no interest, you could just hang here. But anyways, so this movie, I'm going to spoil the ending because to explain everything in the beginning, I have to go by the ending. And giving you context about my religious background, I studied and practiced for a bit some Wiccan. So if you haven't guessed, I'm kind of dropping a hint as to what this all leads to, because I think this movie, I gave it a 10. A lot of people will say that's too high. That's on personal preference, but it's because I said, and I couldn't tell you in my review, I have a sort of attraction to things like this because I did study some of these things. I studied Wiccan, Buddhism, Confucianism, Shindo, karma, chi, everything. Uh, and I think that knowing these different things makes you well-rounded in the choice that you choose to pursue. Because, spiritualism, is different for everybody else. And why I bring this up is because understanding this movie is good to have a fundamental experience in a wide variety of things, because it helps the clues and where this movie goes to make more sense if you're kind of in tuned with what they're setting up. And I will say there are a couple of things that feel like fluff, but not what people think. I've heard a lot of analysis and a lot of different things that I think people either misinterpret or didn't understand the significance in the placement in the story. And that's why this is only the second movie. Long Legs was the other movie I did a breakdown for, and people loved it. So I thought this would be good in either going in and understanding what this movie is, because there's a lot of hype around it, and knowing exactly what you're getting into, and also being able to look out for these different clues. And when you see them, they may make more sense after I explained why they're placed in the particular scene. Now, I'm not going to go blow for blow, script for script. I'm going to take the most important sequences. I'm going to take some of the dream sequences. I'm going to explain some of the stuff behind the ritual, because I think, especially towards the end of the movie, people have a fundamental misunderstanding about what was going on. And I did some research, and if you check my links in the description, I have linked for you guys under the bottom. If you go to more, just look there. It's under a few sources breakdown. I have the nexusofsorcery.com, clawsandbooks.com, the Wikipedia, where I'm citing some of the things that are going on, so you can keep track where I am and where I'm explaining. Because like I said, I'd rather use the wiki plot, like breakdown of the movie, because it's a lot shorter and I can kind of fill in what they don't put in there, as opposed to trying to remember everything offhand, because I still took notes. And if you see me look down, I also have my cell phone. I took some notes on my phone as well. I've had a week to sit on this, and I just rewatched it today at 10 in the morning, and I took down more notes so that I can give you guys the most comprehensive review. So let's just break this down right away. And, anybody coming in, full spoilers. Being that this is spoilers, as I said, instead of burying the lead, I'm going to start at the end of the movie and work my way backwards so that I can explain to you how everything connects and why each story is important, where the intersections are. And besides everything that's thrown at you, what is important to focus on while you're watching the movie? And things you don't think are significant are actually way more significant, especially on a second watch. And I'll probably watch this a third time, because I'll get a bunch of other different stuff in there too. It's hard to focus on everything, especially in the theater. I saw this in IMAX. But what is the overall general thing that's going on? Okay, it's witchcraft. Witchcraft is what is up with the town. Now, on paper, people are probably groaning. They're like, oh, I thought it was going to be something cool. Hold on. Let me explain. This is more intricate than just it's a witch, and we've seen The Witch and all Robert Eggers and all these great directors do this, but this flips it because it uses a section that is a little bit different than most films have portrayed. So the first thing I want to break down is what exactly is being used to control people. And in Wiccan culture, and as I said, I practiced Wicca for a bit in my younger days. Around when I was 13 or 14 years old, I lived in New York. I knew some practicing Wiccans. And so I got into the culture a bit. And as I got into the movie and I figured out what it was, I found it very interesting what they chose to use as the device. And this is where I think people are either really going to like this movie or really hate it. But I want to explain why it all makes sense and why I thought that Zach Cregger did an excellent job with this movie. And honestly, I think I like this more than Barbarian. Although I wouldn't say the idea is wholly original, I would say the way he tackles a very used concept and going into something that's not used often. So let me first explain the thing that they're using, which is a blood ritual. And the ritual uses an anthem or a ritual knife, a chalice, or a bowl, sigils or symbols. And what the antagonist is using in the movie is what's called a binding spell. So in this town, the end point is this is a witch who is dying. It's very vague whether she's connected to the family she's staying with, but there is a ritual, and it's frowned upon in Wiccan culture and Wiccan society. And you can read about it in the links that I left in the description, especially under the Nexus of Sorcery has a great article about it, modern day Wiccan practices and things of that nature. But much like other religions, Wiccan religion is broken into two very different opposing views, almost as you got your Catholics and the Judaism and Islam. And well, Wiccans are also broken up between light and dark rituals and balances and the rule of three, the law of equal exchange, things of that nature. And so blood magic is to be described, it's frowned upon, but it has its uses medicinally. So in this article that I have for you guys to read, there is several different sort of blood rituals, and the symbolism behind it is it's life force magic. It's either you transferring your life force or taking somebody else's life force or using your life force to bind yourself to somebody else. So in the movie, the kids all disappear and we see the different perspectives. And so knowing what this is in the beginning, now let's go back to the introduction and I'll kind of go through the symbolism. So at 217, and I want to highlight this time because it's brought up a lot. Now, if you're not familiar with how spells and things of that work, once again, this is all in the links I left in the description, but in certain blood rituals and magical rituals, historically or not, they have certain criteria that has to be met. And there is certain times within the linear moon cycle, things of that nature. Now, in order to cast a successful spell, it has to be done at a very specific time in a very specific manner. And you have to stick with that as you're performing these things. Now, it is hidden upon that this person who is there doing this to this town is very proficient and may even be what people call an elder or a very advanced in occult practices. And the gist that I get, because once again, the movie doesn't give you much about the character, but you can get hints that I think a lot of people are going to overlook the first time watching this film. One of the hints she says is to the principal of the school, played by Benedict Wong. His name is, hold on, not Paul. Who is it? The principal is, I always forget the actual like names when I'm going through this. Not Justine. I believe because they don't have the full. I know Benedict Wong. Andrew. So Andrew, the principal, who's in charge of this, he sees the witch through his POV because this movie jumps through perspectives, and so the person, Amy Madigan. She's apparently a really famous actor. Sorry. Oh yeah, she was in Uncle Buck. Holy shit. That was a long time. And Field of Dreams. Wow. Okay, so maybe I have seen her, but she's pretty old. She plays the witch Gladys. Now, there is hinted that while these people are under her control, she is siphoning life. Now, if you look under the different links that I've provided in the description, blood magic works in two very specific ways. You can either draw your own power through your blood in order to propel a spell forward, or you draw other people's power and their life force in order to power your blood. Well, what the witch is trying to accomplish in this, which I'm actually surprised a lot of people didn't get it, so I'm glad to be doing this breakdown for y'all. But what she is doing is a massive spell. And like I said, dabbling in Wicca when I was a kid and doing a lot of research, I figured out a couple of things. Back in my young and foolish days, don't mess with that shit, people. Anyways, what she is doing is a spell to rejuvenate her life. Now, this is highly frowned upon in the Wiccan community. And look, there's a couple of people who practice Wicca. Not all of it is this like sinister, evil shit. Even in their own community, there are things that the community largely frowns upon. And this is one of them. And it's also in there with like voodoo and controlling people and love spells and binding spells. Everything has a consequence is the basic principle. Now, what she is doing is siphoning life to extend her own life. Now, in the beginning, you see the two parents, and the parents were a sort of way for her to get on her feet. When she first appears in the movie, and this is why I said I'm going to be jumping around backwards to forwards, because in order to understand this movie, I got to go through the concept and then jump around as the movie did to piece together for you guys the clues that you're looking for. Okay. Now, the epilogue and the beginning are just a setup in the end and have nothing to do with this story. So we're going to work our way to the POV and start with Alex and his perspective so that I can take those big clues and kind of work backwards in presenting what is going on here and give you guys a way to be like, aha, I get it now. So in the beginning, clearly, Alex has two very loving parents, okay? And he also seems to be having issues with people at his school. Also, the family that let Gladys in, who, I'm not going to say it every time, but basically Gladys is the witch. So Gladys, the people who take care of her, Alex's parents, is let me see. Donna Morgan is Paul's wife. Okay, so Alex's mother and father, Mr. Lilly and Mrs. Lilly, they are related to Gladys Lilly, who is the witch. So the gist I'm getting, she mentions in the principal office, which is your first clue on an age and kind of figuring out why she's doing this and how long she's been doing this for. She mentions that they have dysentery to the principal, which he says, well, dysentery hasn't been around since, the friggin', settler days and, the 1800s or whatever, when you had like Western times and whatnot, right? So, you kind of get a sense that she is not from this time period. Meaning, if I had to take a guess, they said she's a great aunt. Now, I'm going to assume for maybe a couple of years, a couple of cycles, and how these spells specifically work is that there are certain times and there's certain like lifespans where, and it's very specific stuff where a witch can perform their ritual, and it has to be under specific circumstances. And I'm guessing too in specific places. Now, the question comes up, and this will probably answer one of your questions: is why this town? Why these people? Well, her relative lives in this town. Now, I'm gathering because according to some of the rituals, these things work better with bloodlines. So people that are connected to you generationally. If I had to guess, she had a kid, let that kid thrive and prosper. They had a kid who had a kid, yada, yada, yada. You got a long bloodline. As a sort of insurance policy, because the way to kind of boost your spell, the way to enhance the effects is to use your lineage in order to perform set ritual or spell. So I don't think, and this is once again my own conjunction and basing stuff off of the movie and what I've read about these particular things, I don't think that the town specifically was necessarily a vindictive target of hers. I've heard it said that there's theories like maybe she had a grudge with this town or stuff like that. I don't believe that to be the case. I think that her bloodline settled in this town maybe for years, and that when she came to visit, when she was sick, she was coming back to her familia, and they happened to be settled in this area. So that's one thing answered here. Also, in the flashbacks with Alex, which by the way is the hardest one to watch, there is a tree, and I wanted to explain this tree. I've looked up several different things to try to figure out what the significance of the tree is. And I found a couple of things close, but I think the design of this and the way it's presented is supposed to be a representation of different trees. So there's a kafa tree, which is used in African blood rituals as a way to anchor. There's specific things where if you want to leech a life, you have to use something that's parasitic. So everything has to be very specific in the way that she's doing this. So this tree has thorns on it. She uses the thorns and then cuts herself using a large amount of blood. She takes a piece of hair or an item of the person and wraps it around this tree. Now, why a tree? Once again, blood magic and all magic is tethered to certain rules, as everything else is. And the rules are, especially with a binding spell, that you need an object of a person, you need something of life and something of death. So this tree could symbolize death. The tree could symbolize life. The blood could be the pathway to death. That's all very vague, and the ritual is very similar to about 4 or 5 different rituals that I looked up. And it is kind of funny because my fiance came while I was doing this research, and she was like, "Well, but at least you're not watching porn." So, anyways, that aside, so with the different things I looked up, and according to what I saw presented, it appears that she is using her own life blood, the tree as a medium, and their object as the point of control. So she's using a very common binding spell. Now, the second part to this, and the part that involves the children, because I've heard a lot of things said, what do the children have to do with this? Why are certain adults being used? And I'll get to the name at the very end of this, because throughout this whole thing, people said, well, why is it called weapons, right? She is weaponizing innocence. She is turning the people, the children, anybody who she binds with is her weapon, her defense. They are weapons. It's nothing political. It is there's a great saying: the simplest explanation, or the best explanation is the simplest. The best way between 2 points is a straight line. It's a straight line. Weapons is very on the nose. These people are being weaponized to protect her, to keep this secret. The children's are being weaponized. they're being used by her. She is sucking the energy from them. So why are the children important? And I'll get back to the epilogue towards the end of this review, but the children are important because, and this is historically, whether I looked up Aztec, Mayan, folklore, European, Norse, whatever, children in certain rituals are very highly valued because they have the most untapped potential and the most energy. Now, why does she want to take Alex? Because, like most witches and practitioners of magic, they need an apprentice. They need somebody they can pass their knowledge along to. And after she used this ritual, she was probably going to use him to lure him and take the next group of kids. So it's kind of like a Hansel and Gretel deal. But, okay, so we've got down the ritual. We've got down what she's using, right? She uses a bowl of water, which I seen it say you could use cauldrons and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to guess how powerful she is able to use the essentials. So she uses a bowl of water. She wraps an object or a thing that the person owns around this stick. She wraps something else, like if she wants somebody attacked or whatever, and she then cuts herself, uses the blood as the binding agent, and breaks it. Why break it? Because in order to initiate certain spells, there is a bunch of procedures, and I got this from looking up everything that I've looked through, and as I said, the links are in the description, but there are different ways of doing a spell. So I switched over, and so if I look like I'm looking at something, I'm just reading some stuff out loud to you so you kind of get an idea. So there's circle casting, which is circles or symbols drawn that have some kind of connection to spiritual entities and other things. There's chanting and mantras, which are words that have power and meaning. You cut yourself and you can use the blood in a book, or you can just be bleeding while saying the incantation. There's offerings. These are the most popular, and historically offerings have been the main thing for blood rituals. You're taught your standard goat, human, whatever is under the whole offering thing. And then the most common or the one that's being used here is what is known as a sacrificial. And it is your own life to power a spell to draw that life back. So the reason why the kids are there and the reason why the parents and everybody are in the state that they're in is she is using energy. She is then taking back that energy through them. She breaks the spell in order to activate it. She rings the bell that she has in order to stop them in place. So she is halting the ritual, and she's more than likely using the blood talisman. The tree that she used is the talisman, but that's just a very, very vague thing. It could also be under a casting ritual, which I think is in the later half of the movie. Casting ritual involves salt and sand and things like that. So at the ending, when you see that she makes the salt line, and when people cross it, it activates the people that she has under her spell. That is a barrier ritual. So there's several different things that are used within this movie. Now, also, we get a bit of what happens to the people that are underneath this ritual. Why can't the parents go in if they're under her control? This is not psychic. This is not ESP. And a lot of what Wiccans do and, the paranormal stuff tends to get a little bit confused. So I know another big question is, why didn't anybody stop this ritual? Why didn't everybody go and break the spell or whatever else? Well, it's not that simple. And some people are thinking, well, was it like mind control? And yes and no. This ritual latches on to the spirit of the individual. You are taking a hold of not, you're not brainwashing the person per se. It's not a psychological thing. You even see glimpses of the parents talking to their son. When she takes control of them, it is not an ESP brainwash thing. It is a soul thing. So it's on a spiritual level. The ritual she's performing, and from what I've looked up, and once again, like I said, you can click the link in the description to get all of this and read it yourself. But it is what is called a soul bound, which means that essentially the people she is controlling have no other functions. They're fucking zombies, basically. With the very basic skills that she allows them to have. So there's a scene, this is why I'm working backwards in the story, in Alex's perspective, where he has to feed everybody's Campbell's soup. And the reason why he has to do that is because they can do no other function except for attack or go to specific spots that the practitioner designates. Meaning that you're probably thinking, well, how does she get them to attack people? Like, she's getting these people to run through the streets crazy. That's where the term, again, weapons is a very accurate thing. Think of it as when you are using any kind of a weapon. And I don't know what I can get away with saying. I don't want to get into specifics, but you guys know what I'm talking about, right? That thing that can seriously harm people, right? If used wrong, used for hunting. You guys know where I'm going with this, right? The bullet has no function. It has no indifference. It has no personality. It has no moral dilemma about what it's doing. It is simply a tool. And when she possesses people, they are tools of this ritual, meaning they have no functions. They can't take care of themselves because she is controlling. They are just a body. What they were is gone. And so when you see that blank void look in the people's eyes during this movie, they have lost essentially their essence. And I figured all of this out while going through this very long, article, right? But I figured it all out because of a couple of key things, right? Is that during these rituals, especially binding rituals, you are messing with a person on a very whatever people believe, right? Soul, essence, life, whatever gives us our spark, right? When you're using blood magic, you are directly interfering and you are manipulating that part of the person. That's why they say love spells are dangerous, things where you mess with people's physical beings, their souls, their essence, whatever you want to call it. When you're messing around with that, you are messing with a thing that we, even in science, can't quantify, right? People put a lot on the brain, but if that was the case, then the magic wouldn't work because your brain would override it, right? So she's essentially short-circuiting what makes a person a person. Now, to kind of touch on the ending, because I know a lot of people were confused about certain sections, right? So why did the kids recover and why didn't the parents recover? Well, here's the thing, and I could only find very vague explanations because, like I said, a lot of this stuff is secretive, but I know from my own personal experiences and people that I've talked to in Wiccan communities and things like that, is when you do the type of magic she's doing, you are essentially taking people, you're taking their essence, you're taking their very being, and you are playing around with it. You're messing with a superior force. And whether people believe in heaven or hell, or whether we have souls or don't, or whether we're part of the great beyond, whatever, they're not getting that deep in this movie. But for this breakdown, for me to best describe what happened is, it's all about the time that she had the people under her control. Okay? So there is a month gap in between when the kids leave, when the story starts, right? And now when you go to the flashback of Alex, we assume that is prior to the month gap that the children were under the control of Gladys. So in this gap, she has essentially been siphoning whatever makes a person, right? She's been siphoning. Sorry. Delicious water, folks. Stay hydrated. Anyways, she's been siphoning the essence of the person for months now. Okay. So for the parents, that's like 2 months. Now, you also got to think about this from a standpoint of the whole thing which kicked this off. She is dying, which means to be restored to where she was by the time you get to the perspective of Alex, right? Because she's able to walk around. So let's go back when they first meet, right? And this is why I'm working my way backwards, because a lot of the answers are in Alex's POV, right? So when the parents welcome Gladys, she's severely ill, right? She comes super late at night. And after returning home, almost immediately from the sick, frail, unable to move on death's door, right? She is up. She got her wig on. So what happened? Like, how do the mechanics work? Now, here's where I can only offer speculation and some of what the movie gives us, right? I don't know specifically how much she's draining for people or how much it takes, but obviously the parents were just enough to get her back up on her feet and able to interact, right? Now, think of it as, why are the parents more fucked up than the kids by the epilogue? It's because the kids are young. They will have time to replenish themselves, right? You can replenish your soul, replenish, your health, whatever. Kids bounce back quickly. However, the adults, she's had under her control for 2 months. Now, we saw how quickly that Archer recovered when Gladys's fate happened, right? That was because Archer was only under her control for a matter of minutes. We assume the cop and the junkie was under her control for a day. So I'm gathering, and without having a definitive timeline or talking to the director or whatever else. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the love for the hat. I haven't talked to the director. I don't know what their timeline is, but I made a rough estimate of the timeline for how her ability works. So we know she's using a siphon spell to siphon people's life force. She is fueling the spell with her own life force. So it's a give and take. So even though she's taken energy, she's still given a large amount of energy, considering at this point in the movie, when we first meet her, that she's sick. It stands to reason that even giving as much energy as she did to perform the initial spell, she still took a lot of away and wasn't getting back enough from the parents. So here's where the kids come into play. Now, I don't know specifically how many days she would have needed, but she tells Alex to pack because they're almost being discovered, right? Shit's going down. And this is where I think that she was healed enough. I think that the mass amount of kids, the specific number that she got was enough. And with how young they are and how vibrant they are, was enough to replenish her enough to be able to be mobile and maybe go to the next town and do the same exact thing again. Although her plot was foiled. But at that point, even at the end, and you see she's running, sprinting, and stuff like that. So she had taken quite a bit of energy from the cop, the junkie, Alex's parents. They probably were damn near on E because she said it wasn't enough. And the kids, because if you look at the scene, and this is where Alex's perspective really pieces together everything that we've been trying to figure out. She does a ritual. This is the cauldron now, where she takes all of their pictures, lights it on fire, spits in it, whatever, lights it on fire. And she goes like this to the ground. When she's kind of hovering the ground, meditating and telling him that he needs to be quiet, she is also using incantations now. So this is a blend of several different things that I've looked up under these blood rituals, right? They're using the blood binding. They are using hold on, I'm trying to find my way down this article. So they're using blood binding. They're using atoning and sealing, and they're using binding and offering. So this is sort of a mixture of everything that I've read within the blood rituals. That seems to be a little bit of a combo of every single thing that is required for a blood ritual. So if I had to guess, and given that she mentioned dysentery, she's a witch of very, 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 very huge power. Now, how she got sick, once again, this is speculation. It's probably she was fading. And this goes into the modernization of man, right? The loss of belief, killing the environment. You could use whatever kind of symbolism you want. I think that's left up for audience interpretation. But she could have just caught a common sickness, and she is using magic in order to combat it. Whatever the reason, she needs a mass amount of power, and it is working. She does get a pick-me-up after draining the parents. And then when she gets the children, she starts to look really good. She's got the wig on. She's moving around. She's able to go to different houses. It's she's up and moving. She's a spry old lady. Okay. So now that we've got together what this ritual is, it's a blood ritual. It's a binding ritual. The ritual is what's called siphoning. So you give and you take. So you're giving a piece of yourself and you're taking everything that is somebody else's. So that comes to the question that most people, is she from this town? Well, she has relatives here. She probably knew of them. They probably, how many people have a great grandma you don't know about, or an Aunt Cecile from a third, second distant relative? I could see over the years, especially if she's as old as she's hinted to, they probably don't realize she's the same great Aunt Millie from the fucking 1800s. Okay. So the only piece of that puzzle I could figure out was that she had been in this family for a long time. And she had been passing it off, throughout the years. Who knows if someone figured it out? That's all not made very clear. And it doesn't really have to be. So I'm assuming she's used this binding ritual throughout the years, and for some reason now it's failing. And this is where I would have liked more on the Gladys character, because I don't know, you get the feeling that she is very malicious in her intent, and at the same time, she's also very desperate. And this in most is a very last minute thing to pull off. So we've seen Alex's perspective, right? So let's go to the other perspective that is here, and that is, let's go to the perspective of, they kind of do this wonky. Okay, so Andrew's perspective, the school teacher. This is where I feel like people are going to miss certain things. And like I said, this video is comprehensively breaking down things you've missed. So Andrew's flashback, Andrew is the principal, and I'm working my way backwards so that if I gather these clues for you here, you can put the pieces together. And when you rewatch, you might be able to see these things as you go through. So Andrew is the principal. Andrew, he cares about what's going on. Well, he cares about what's going on with the kids, but we'll get to later on um, uh, Justine's POV. Okay, but for Andrews, he cares about what's going on with the kids. But Justine has really been writing his ass about following up because there's something off with Alex. Now, Alex is where Gladys is staying, right? So, what happens in this scene with Benedict Wong? And here's where the movie might get some people to go, this is stupid. Why would you let these people in? Okay, so Andrew's gay. He's got a gay husband, right? And so he is disarmed by Gladys. And this is one of the things that I think that is important to the movie in figuring out key things about Gladys and who she is. Now, what can we take from what she's been doing to this town and knowing? Now, some people I've heard interpret it as she's trying to bring down the whole town. And I would say you're wrong. Her goal, we established, is simple. She needs a mass amount of life to rejuvenate her own life. She is using a blood siphoning ceremony. She ideally does not want to draw attention to herself because of, doing reckless stuff. I am also going to gather that being that she's been around for, it's got to be at least 100 years, maybe more, right? This isn't the first time she's done this ritual. And you can see that with the way she manipulates the situation. So in Andrew's POV, the manipulation is clear that she is taking the form of this, this worried great aunt who the parents are ill and she's taking care of. She's taking care of Alex. She's his guardian until the parents get better. Now, where things force her to, in Andrew's POV, intercede is that Andrew insists, because of rules, that he has to go for a house visit because our protagonist, Justine, has got on the horn, annoyed the shit out of Andrew, Benedict Wong's character, and said, hey, you are bound legally to check this out or she is going to go to CPT. And he does not want to put the young Alex into an even more intense situation, right? She doesn't want to put his family through more trauma. So he's going to go as the mediator, as the man in charge. He's going to probably find nothing because the police found nothing. The FBI found nothing, right? And once again, through Alex's flashbacks, we've seen the way she manipulates and games the system. She uses this makeup to cover the face of the parents because she makes them stab themselves to get Alex on her side, right? So she is a manipulator. And now here's where I think people get confused. This person is not trying to draw attention, and it's very clear by the end of the movie. She is removing obstacles, but here, and this is where I like the modern spin on this movie, what is it like to try to do one of these rituals in our modern time? You have cameras, door cameras, things like that, right? You have modern cell phones, security, CPT has to come to a home, right? Now, she's probably lived for a couple, 100 years, 150 years, whatever the case may be, right? And she's gone through this technological age. But in this era, it is a lot easier to be caught for these things. So I've heard it thrown around that maybe this is like the town she wants to get back. I don't think that's the case at all. My own personal conjunction is that I think that she is trying to silence the people who are getting too close. She's cutting off certain branches, pun intended, in order to keep the investigation and keep people off her back until she can finish siphoning the essence from the children and then I assume move along. And she was probably going to take Alex with her. And this is a part of her manipulation. So later, Gladys visits Andrew and his husband at his house, Terry, where she says she is so tired, she needs a bowl of water. And this is where some people may have an issue. Look, the plot has to happen. I'm sure there could have been a different way to go about this. I'm not going to, this isn't like diving into the faults of the movie or whatever. Yes, I know it's kind of like, oh, what's going on? And they do make references to it. Doesn't mean it makes it better. I'm just saying the movie does acknowledge, okay, this is where you kind of have to suspend your disbelief for a slight second, right? So Gladys does her deal where we saw her looking at the badges that the principal had gotten, his achievements, and she takes one of those, she cuts the hair of his Andrew's husband, and she does the little dealy where she seals them together, takes her blood, and she wipes it across. Now, this is where we can get a kind of hint of what the possession is like. And when I say that their essence leaves, right? So why are they not able to move and do anything else? Well, if you look at this one particular moment, and shout out to Benedict Wong, did a great job in the practical effects, making his eyes bulge. Super awesome. So you see at the moment, and listen to the sound cues. There's a zzz. That to me is a signal of her taking out the essence of that person. So when she is controlling these weapons, there's another thing to why this movie is what it's called. I hate when people don't get the explanation. I thought it was very simple, but whatever. Anyways, so she essentially took his essence, and that blank stare, there is nothing left. He is now a puppet being controlled by Gladys, which shows when he immediately turns and she snaps the twig, he turns and fucking beelines it towards Terry, right? Because what makes Andrew, right? The thing, the soul, whatever it is that can't be explained by science, she has essentially ripped that out of his body, right? He's not in there. And you could see points where the people's eyes are red, right? And this is what I'm saying, a second watch really helps with this movie. Every detail is given to you on specifically what's happening. Not maybe what the ritual entails or the specifics. Those are things that you have to look up. And I've given you a couple of ideas that may vaguely be everything in as far as blood magic goes. But, okay, working in the framework of this movie, right? Even the sounds are giving you a hint as to what's happening, right? When Benedict Wong and that thing snaps, right? The first thing, everything is with sound. So at first, she rings the bell. Now, there's several steps, as I said before, to a spell. It's not just she does the deal and it attacks, right? First, she rings the bell. The bell is a harmonic device used as a way to steal the soul or to keep it from moving, right? Boom, he freezes. Then she does the thing. The other guy's like, Terry, yeah, Andrew, what's going on, right? And she's wrapping it, and then she goes, and you hear the zzz. He looks up and goes back like this. And once that breaks, he beelines it. Now, here's where I'm unclear, and this part of the analysis is going to be conjunction. I believe that she is giving the order through her will. So certain spells are done through chanting. This isn't a telepathy thing. I know a lot of people might lean towards that. It's not an ESP thing. I believe that it is, they say when you do these things, your will directs your spell. So when she snaps that twig, her intent is murder. Therefore, the person's intent is being controlled by her will. Her intent is to kill this person that is directly in the way. And like I said, these people are, say it with me, folks, weapons. They are being used by this person as a instrument to take these obstacles out of her way. So first she tests it, right? Because Terry knows about Gladys now. He can't live. He knows he came to visit, and the clues are in the thing where she's saying, "Did you tell anyone? Does anybody know?" And he didn't. He wanted to handle it himself. So once she knew that, boom, she goes, and then bam, she wraps. She breaks that spell, kills Harry. Now here's the thing that's super important, right? She has that plant and she has these sticks because you can only get one use out of them. Whatever it is, now certain spells and certain things can use an object multiple times, but once you have used that, you have to do a whole nother thing for a new target. So you see her get another stick out. After she breaks it and puts it in the water bowl, she cannot use that same binding agent. That was for one use only, right? So she pulls out another one, wraps Justine's hair, snaps it, and that's where we see our man do a Naruto run all the way the fuck through the town. And I just want to comment really quick. Super hilarious. I love, especially in this, in a modern setting. I don't know what the suburbs are like. I grew up in the city. I lived in a couple of suburbs, but whatever. I love the reaction of people seeing this fucking guy running through town, beelining it, and like, whoa, like, whoa, but no one calls cops or nothing. Hilarious. And that's where I'm saying there's a little bit of humor in this movie. But anyways, so then you see him go, and he goes to attack Justine. As he gets there, Archer tackles him and tries to stop him. Now, this is important because I've also heard this as a point of contention. Why isn't he taking out other people, right? Spells are specific. One-time use, remember? Whatever she targets, whatever she designates as the point A to point B, and this is also explained later by Archer, and we'll get to him, it's a straight line. She cannot deviate from targets. It's why it benefits her to possess multiple people to do multiple things. Because once she has one person targeted, she cannot change target. Just like the person under her control does not have anything in them. Now, she's no longer directly controlling them. Now, like I said, this is an ESP. This is a spell that must be done to its conclusion. And that is whether the person dies or whether the person they're targeting dies. But the spell has to be completed, right? They will continuously go after that person. They will continuously be singularly focused on that one thing because that is their only driving motivation. They don't eat, they don't sleep. They have one singular purpose, and that is to hone in on the target, right? And like I said, hopefully you guys are keeping up with the clues, but let's just continue, right? So we've got the blood ritual. The blood ritual, she needs the kids to siphon their power. She's using the adults, but not as a source of power. She is using them as a weapon, as a form of protection against the people trying to figure out where the kids are until she can complete her ritual and drain them of their life essence. Okay? So we get the ending of this whole section, right? This perspective with Andrew chasing down Justine. He chases her into a gas station, starts strangling her. Andrew, played by the amazing Josh Brolin, he plows him into the side of this like glass big case, right? Now, another point of contention is, why are they so strong? Blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind, these are supernatural forces. These people are being controlled. They are being manipulated by Gladys's will, right? They cannot be stopped until the task is done. And, like with the junkie getting up after being punched a couple of times, we'll get to that all at the end when I circle back around to Alex's final perspective and the overall resolution to talk about why it's so abrupt and quick. Okay, so they don't stop until they finish whatever it is they're doing. And I think this reminds me a lot of Kilgrave from like Jessica Jones, right? When he took control of their mind. But once again, this isn't ESP. This is blood magic rituals, right? So I'm doing conjunction at this one thing. I think they are given some kind of supernatural strength, speed, the willingness to continue, right? It could just be the power of the person or their power of their will, because when you watch the fight between Archer and the junkie, you see that he or James, but you see that he isn't as strong as the other ones, right? He didn't get imbued with any kind of powers. Like Archer beats the shit out of him, but he gets back up. He keeps on going because whatever would knock a person out or whatever, he's not in there. He's gone. Zoop, bye. So it's not these people are supernatural in any way. They are still them. Their will is just a bit stronger, right? They aren't being knocked out because there's already nobody home. It's like, and that goes back to pay attention to the sounds in this movie, which I love this movie because of that, right? When you hear that sound, that zzz, and then you see the person's eyes go blank, they're gone. And it's Gladys's will that's driving these people now. And she is somewhere else. So, and this will bring me to the very ending. That's why I'm doing this sort of backwards, right? Because then we'll get to the ending. And hopefully by the time I lay out all the clues, it'll make more sense to you. So anyways, so she has gotten him to go after Justine. Justine gets in her car, drives off like a bat out of hell. Fucking hilarious scene. And I gotta say, some people in my theater laughed. I laughed. When she was like, fuck this. Drives off, right? But what does Alex do? Alex will continue his mission, or Andrew will continue his mission until Justine is dead. And unfortunately, his mission is singular. So as he's chasing Justine through this fucking busy intersection, he is singly focused on her truck and does not see the car coming along the side. And I gotta say, me and a bunch of people in the theater were like, holy shit, because he gets fucking plowed. My man gets taken out, right? And he's done. So now let's get into the next perspective. And as you can see, now some people say some perspectives aren't important, but Andrew's is important because, like, I'd say every perspective is super important. Even James, and we'll get to that because James intersects with Paul's. Everybody is important in this because even through the simplest actions, they are all interconnected puzzle pieces that are getting to the root cause. And Alex is the last puzzle piece because he is, in fact, in the home where Gladys resides, right? So that's why I started with what the reveal was, and I'm going backwards to the perspective so I can show you guys the clues as you're getting through the certain points of this film, right? So let's go to James. James is a very interesting one. And I got to say, I heard some people say they weren't sure if it was important. Some people say he is important, but James might be the most tragic and pivotal point of this movie. So James is an addict. It's implied that he is a heroin addict and he is out on the streets. Now, earlier, James had a run-in with Paul. Paul, we'll get to in a second. Paul is the cop who is kind of central to connecting to James. But James, you go through and see how each character kind of intersects off screen, right? But it starts with James trying to break into this abandoned house. And during the break-in, Paul says, "Do you have any needles?" He says no. He had some in his pocket, poked his finger. And I like the kind of suggestion, especially with law enforcement and right, when they're frisking individuals and things like that. It's a very dangerous line of work. And it's dangerous because you don't know if that person has AIDS or any other kind of disease. And being that you use needles and it's blood to blood. And once again, I think this is also a symbolism to blood, right? But I'm just interjecting stuff. But there's a through line of blood, right? Family, friends, relatives, needles, blood magic. It's all connected by this. It's all in there as you're watching it. But the movie does such a good job of keeping you in these intense moments. You're solely focusing on what you think is important in the screen, but it's telling you exactly what's going on. So James, right? Heroin, blood magic, there's a connection, but his is the most important because through this, we learn that a little bit about James, and also the struggles are important too, because it tells why certain people don't do certain things that they should do when it happens. So James gets assaulted by Paul earlier, and that's where his story intersects with Paul's. But Paul, okay, lets him go because he realizes that on his cam, he assaulted him. He could get in trouble. He says, "Hey, if I ever fucking see you again, I'm going to fucking run you out of this town," right? Very old school, Old Testament type shit. And so Paul is trying to get money this whole time to get drugs. And when he does this car and try to sell this stuff, he can't. So he winds up being caught trying to break into an abandoned house. He gets roughed up by Paul, and then James intersects with Alex because he sees Alex's house. The windows are all covered. He climbs into the second floor window, and he starts going inside. And as he's rifling through stuff, he goes into the living room. He notices that Alex's parents are in this fucking translate state. And this is where I'm saying the people are vacant, right? They're more of a detection system for the witch or for Gladys, where they can't do anything without being given a command. And it takes a while for Gladys to be able to set these things up to get them to turn on people. Remember, she can only direct one target at a time. She has to go through a bunch of stuff ritually to get them to turn, right? There's rules. So I'm sure she heard him rifling in, and he's downstairs. He's stealing a bunch of their shit. And then he goes down to the cellar to see if he can see anything, and he finds all of the kids. They're in the basement. So he goes to the police because when he goes to the pawn shop, turning in the stuff he stole from Alex's house, he realizes there's a cash reward. So as he's going to the station, we now loop back to when Paul sees him at the end of his story, and he says, like, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing here?" and chases him down. As he chases him down, he goes into the woods and he sees images of Gladys. And now where we see Gladys or where she appears in dreams and stuff, this is a little side note I want to interject here. I think these serves as warnings because she does not want to try to kill these people, right? She draws attention every time somebody is dying, someone goes missing. These 17 kids are just starting to blow over, right? And so she is trying to stay as low-key as possible. And she flashes an image, and I think he sees the image as a warning. But once again, he's a junkie. James goes into the woods. He tries to zip up the thing. Paul catches him. he sticks Paul again with needles, and he's like, hey, do you have hepatitis or anything like that? And he goes, no, man, I don't think so, which was another hilarious nod. Now, James goes, hey, this house is where those kids are, right? I want the money. Now, we see Paul enter, and then hours later, we see Paul come back out, and Paul has that vacant look. So it's assumed sometime in the house, Gladys got him under her control. And then after she figured out that James was still in the car, he comes out, drags him out. That's the end of his thing. So what have we learned here? We've learned that Gladys can only get one person at a time. The ritual takes a while, so she needs to use other people in order to slowly influence everyone. And it is much safer to keep these people under her control. Now, she could be siphoning small amounts of energy from them, but I think these people are more of what's called a protection. So she's using her magic to keep them sort of as guard dogs. All right, so then let's go to the next perspective, which is Archer. Or no, I'm sorry, Paul, the cop. It goes to Archer later. So Paul is a police officer. He is with this woman who is her name is I don't even know what her name is. They don't really mention her much, but we'll say Paul's wife gets pissy and goes and confronts Justine. This will come back later, but Paul is married, I'm going to assume, to the police chief's daughter. He is in a very interesting situation where he is frustrated with how the system is going and how everything seems to be at a standstill. So he goes to work. He has his run-in with the junkie. Now we cut back, and later on that night, he goes and he sleeps with Justine. And this was in her scene, but like I said, they interconnect. And they interconnect either closely or sparsely, depending on whose perspective you're viewing the thing from. So Paul doesn't realize by chasing this junkie, he is chasing a lead, because as we said in James's perspective, he has already found the kids. So when Paul gets stabbed, he's nervous, whatever else. I assume that at this time, we are in Justine's perspective. That's when she gets confronted by the wife, because he probably told her that he got stabbed at work or whatever else, and he was sleeping with somebody else. He also told Justine that him and his wife were on the outs. So he's a very morally ambiguous character. But during this whole entire thing, he is like, I am not going to deal with this anymore, whatever. He breaks his sobriety. He has a one-night stand. He is having a fucking terrible time. And after that, he gets to a point where he has the main key. And this is where, when you first see this movie, you might not get the significance, but Paul's part is important because he's directly connected to James. James essentially finds out, without knowing, because he's an addict, that he's found everything out. He just cares about the money. Now, Paul is connected to James because of the events that happened before, with him tracking him down and giving him a warning. So see, everything bobs, weaves, and interconnects into everything else. And while you're thinking you're watching this and it's not making any sense, he's also connected to Justine. His one-night stand, him getting pricked by this needle, everything led up to him wanting to get James again, because he told him, get the fuck out of here, or the next time I see you, there's going to be hell to pay, right? And that leads him to go into the house, to then being controlled. So that's kind of the rundown of his significance within this story. And Paul's is quite tragic too, because of how it ends. And once again, I'm doing the very ending separately, because I already told you what this is about, but I want to work back through the events, and then we'll go to the end, and then I'll tell you why it works for me extremely well. As a matter of fact, probably better than Barbarians. But anyways, so then we switch over, and let's go to the one that hit me in the feels, being a father, Archer. So Archer Graff is the father of one of the missing children. And Archer is also very important. I've heard it said, and this is why I hate reviewers, right? Because everybody's POV is very, very intricate and important. And this is a movie that you have to watch a couple of times. Like, I watched this a week ago and I forgot things. That's why I watched it this morning to bring you guys this review, and I took several notes. And I got the links in the description you can follow for the occult stuff so that you can understand the ritual that's happening in the movie. But so I've been researching this for a week. And so rewatching this, I love this movie more because all of the pieces these stories are so vitally important to one another. If you break the chain in any of these stories, nothing makes sense. And the good mystery is that every single person and every single point of view has a purpose, and everybody has a purpose, right down to the person you don't think has a purpose. And so Archer, he's one of my favorites. I love Josh Brolin. I'm a father, and his story hit me in the feels the hardest. So we get a day in the life. Now, here's another thing that I heard. Why are we going through these people's lives? It is key to understanding the motivations to do what they do in the movie. He is a blue-collar worker, indicated by the fact that he owns a construction company, and obviously he's the lead foreman. We see that his son being missing has directly affected his work by the fact that he ordered the wrong paint. Now, one mystery I never figured out, and I don't know who did it, but someone obviously used his paint and painted witch on the side of Justine's car. That's implied because he has the red paint, and her car is painted in red paint. So that's never solved. It's not a big fucking deal to me. I just wanted to point that out. So anyways, Archer's perspective is important because he is the desperate father willing to think outside the box that the police won't, and symbolizes what B.D. Wong says in the movie later, where in the beginning, he says to Justine, "You are a teacher, but you can never understand the perspective of a parent because you do not have a kid." And it's a harsh thing to say, but I think it refers to the emotional attachment and the feelings of wanting to pursue something, needing an answer. And within needing the answer, he comes up with something. So he works in construction. And this is where we get a cool little appearance from Justin Long. Fucking love Justin Long, man. Him and the director must be friends. This is like his second appearance. He was obviously a main character in Barbarian, but Justin Long is the father of one of the other missing children. So they put together, and this is very clever. And this brings us back to what I said, where weapons is a very obvious name. If you put the clues together, right? When you shoot guns and things, it moves in a straight line. He determines that the children were moving in a straight line, and that wherever, like perfectly straight, wherever these are intersecting, that's the point of where the kids are. And this is such a brilliant way to do this because we have established, as I said earlier in this stream, the people that are being possessed do not have a will of their own. Therefore, they can only be given certain directions. They are basically like puppets, right? So it makes sense that they would move in a perfectly straight line to a perfect central point because they can only do certain things, right? That's why the witch has to maneuver things into a certain manner when she performs this. So he gets a map and he looks at his house, he makes an X, looks at another house, makes an X, and he circles about a block radius of where those points should intersect, giving him now a good point of reference to where the children may have roughly gone, right? But the location is unspecified. Now, here's an interesting character development, character growth, right? Justine is a pariah, and I'm going to get to her point of view because, like I said, I've been working my way backwards. Justine is next. Don't worry. So Justine is a pariah. everybody blames her. And this movie also is touching on different central themes, right? People we blame, we want to get mad. And if he would have just talked to her in the beginning, they probably could have figured this out way ahead of time. But because their anger and their emotions were so focused on it has to be a person, it has to be something trying to rationalize, he wasn't able to just talk to her, because had he talked to her, the map he created later, she could have just pinpointed and been like, yeah, I have this student Alex, who's the only other one who is left in this class, right? And everything seems to be coming from his house. They're acting fucking weird and stuff like that, but they don't come up with that till later because of the fact that he is angry at her and needs somebody to blame for his missing son. It's only when he stops to rationalize the thought and to come up with this map and to talk to the other parent that he realizes that there is a place this is going. There is a focal point to all of this, right? So he draws the thing on the map, and his story ends in where he is talking to Justine, and then Andrew comes and tackles her, and that's kind of where they cut it off. So let's get to Justine. Justine is our first POV, and I'll even throw the introduction. So at 2:17 in Maybrook, Pennsylvania, 17 children disappeared. Justine arrives to class as she always did, and the only person in the class that day is her and Alex Lilly. And so the police launch an investigation, and they interview Alex and Justine. Now, after this all happens, there is a thorough, extensive investigation into her. And now this part of the story, I've heard people say is slow. I've even heard some reviewers say that, and that's hogwash. It's nonsense, because this is also very pivotal, and I'll tell you why, and things to look forward to as you're watching this. Even the beginning is super important. Okay, so Justine cares for the kids. She cares too much, right? And her drive to figure out what's going on, and also her flaws, is how she gets into a certain situation when I get to the end of the movie, and then also why she was targeted by this witch, right? Yes, great a second time. I totally agree. So I'm laying down my theories, and I put links in the descriptions for people to follow along to figure out what this was. It's a blood ritual. I have a whole thing on it. There's 2 sites you can look up the whole entire ritual. It's actually a real ritual. Anyways, well, it's 3 in 1. It's protection, it's binding. You know, back in the day, Zod studied some stuff in Wicca. It's a long story. I was a teenager. I was a young villain. I decided I wanted to use more conventional superpowers. Anyways, that isn't the point. So, Justine's POV and why this is so important. So she's grilled, she is hated, she is isolated from these people. Now, I've heard reviewers say her part is slow, blah, blah, blah. Her part directly connects to Paul, who we talked about later, because as I said in this review, I've been working my way backwards. Also, Justine has a connection. And so people are wondering what the visions mean, and I will tell you. So when performing rituals and things like that, there are a certain essence that you leave behind. People who have deep emotional connections can sometimes pick up on residual energy. In magic and Wicca, in particular, Wicca practices, there is a cost, there is a price, and there is what they call a trace. So when you do magical spells, you leave a trace behind, like a thumbprint of what you've done. Now, seeing as to she has directly influenced these kids, and the teacher, and Josh Brolin, is the parent of one of the missing kids, and the most committed and the strongest willed, and this teacher, because she's ostracized and made to feel like shit, is and has genuine compassion for her students, she starts to have dreams, and she sees Gladys in her dreams. Now, when Gladys appears on the ceiling and it's kind of like a freaky thing, people are saying, well, what is that all about? It is a warning. It's a warning from the caster. You can look this up. I've linked links in the description. When you perform spells, you also can come back to the scene of the crime, so to speak. She can see through places she has been. She was warning her because, as I said in the beginning of my stream, Gladys is not intent on causing the town chaos. That is not her end goal. She wants to complete her ritual with the least amount of eyes on her as possible. It just so happens she's drawing attention because we're in a modern era and 17 fucking kids went missing, right? So that's going to draw attention. And even after she thought she got past the investigation, there are two very spirited people that won't let it go. And it's through willpower that these things are able to be overcome, right? That you're able to figure these things out. And Archer and Justine both have very strong wills. So when they both receive those visions, they are seeing the after image of what Gladys has done. They are essentially tracing her fingerprints. When she appears to them, it is like a very veiled warning of back the fuck off. When they didn't take the hint, that is when she interjected in a more forceful manner, right? That's where she directly got involved. You have to remember, when we started Justine's story, Gladys is not as powerful as she is nearing the end of this movie. She just got enough power to get herself up, to talk to the police or whatever, but she is still powering herself. She is still siphoning this energy from the kids. Magic is a slow process. There is no time limit. There's no exact science. You get what you get whenever the spell is completed, right? And so she is trending very carefully. So her first thing and the dream sequences represent a warning. Now, the biggest mystery, the image when he looks up into the sky, AFK 215. Very simple. The children were weaponized at 215. The weapon is pointing him to the place he has to look. As I said, spells leave a trace. They leave behind some kind of presence. They are essentially tapping into clues that she has left behind because, as I said before, and I'm gathering from clues throughout this movie, she is a very powerful witch, but everything leaves behind a print. To consider it, if you were a detective, consider it like somebody murdered somebody and they left a fucking thumbprint at the scene of the crime. Her prints are these after images that only certain people would be able to pick up. And these people would have to be directly connected to whatever is going on, and they would have to have emotional and spiritual connection. And I know it's going to sound hokey, but just bear with me. This is powerful. There are rules. When I was a younger lad and I was into Wicca, they believe that in nature, everything is connected to each other. We're all connected. You're connected to the trees, the roots, life essence, life energy, blah, blah, blah. When you do a spell or when you are doing any kind of magic, you are taking from one thing and placing it into another. And when you do that, there are costs, there are consequences, and there are traces that are left behind because you can't take one thing and destroy it to make another without having a repercussion. There are echoes, as they call them, of things that happen. So the visions that both Archer and Justine are seeing are echoes of the spell that was already done. And that's why they start to get the thing. Now, the gun was the most important because the weapon was pointed where? At the tower. That is where he drew the map and figured out that the straight line was going to the tower because after, right? Remember when he woke up? And this was hilarious, by the way. He said, what the fuck? That's what I would have said. That bitch looked crazy. Anyways, right? When he walked up, look at where the gun is in the sky. He wakes up. He goes outside. Where that gun was, there was the tower. And then he looked and traced the line and realized that the straight line was going, he assumed, towards the tower. But aha, the house that Gladys lives in is by the tower. So he was essentially had the clue, but he didn't have enough pieces of the puzzle to connect that it wasn't the tower he was looking for. That was just a reference point. He was looking for the house that was next to that fucking tower. And I believe the gun was over, like pointing over towards the tower, but I believe it was maybe even like directly over this house that was given to him, but it was a subconscious thing, right? Because dreams, that would be going into dream walking and all sorts of stuff that I don't want to go into. This isn't a big philosophical thing. I'm just giving you the nuts and bolts of what's going on. So that vision was pointing him specifically to where he goes, which is where he picks up that clue. Now, Justine, people say this is the biggest waste of time. I highly disagree. So Justine starts getting the nightmares about the kids. Now, why does she see the kids? And as I said, it is after images of what is happening. Everybody leaves a trace. Her spirit, who she is being a teacher. And she is connected to her children. And there's clues in the movie that B.D. Wong drops. It's right there for everybody to listen. He says, you are too close to your kids. She gives them hugs. She gives them rides home. Now, any good parent would be like, that teacher's fucking awesome. But in our society now, which I like because it's a little bit of societal commentary, right? You can't hug kids. You can't give them a fucking ride home, right? There's all of this red tape. But that isn't the point. It's setting up the fact that she has a strong connection with the children. They may not be her kids, but she feels responsible for them in a way that is almost like a parent. It is like she lost 16 or 17 children in this incident. So she is specifically tied into this. And now I don't know if Gladys knew this would happen, and I'll get to the very ending when I get to it to give you my theories of how I think she might have, because she also appears as a nightmare at the ending to ward her off. Because once again, she's trying to tell them to back the fuck off without having to get her hands bloody. So she has given them warnings, and then that'll go to my analysis of Gladys, because I know that's another thing people are confused about. But let's just stay here for a second. So she sees these children, and this sparks that interest, that concern for her to keep on pressing the issue. So she follows Alex. She looks in the house. She notices that his parents are acting really fucking weird. And at this point, she makes a call, and she forces Andrew, using the system, to have to do a wellness check. And I already did Andrew's arc because, as I said, I'm working my way backwards. So go back a little bit. You can get the details from there. But that kind of sets that into motion. That also tips off Gladys on who the person was that did the call. Because, as I said, Gladys is able to manipulate and use these things in order to figure these things out. So it ends with her falling asleep outside the car and her hair being cut. And so now that I've gone through every perspective, I'm going to go through the very end, which is that we finally meet up where Justine and Archer are at Alex's house, and there they see Paul come out and kind of wave him in. And so I've heard a lot of things said now, what's the deal with the salt and things like that, okay? So here's the thing you need to know about spells and things like that, right? The world of Wicca and all of this stuff operates on certain rules. And when you do spells, if you ever notice, especially in this movie, pay close attention. She does these things one at a time. And it's because she is using blood magic. And as I linked to, you can check out once again, the links are in the description where you can read some of this stuff up. But very briefly, there is a bunch of different steps. You just don't snap a twig and you fucking control someone. You got to get an item. You got to use your blood. You got to use the bell to still their soul and then break the twig to completely possess their soul. There is rules, right? So as far as this is called a defensive spell. What defensive spells are is they operate on the initial spell, but they are an extra barrier and as such extra steps. Now, I believe she used what is called assault barrier, real thing. Also a nod to Supernatural. So salt traditionally has been misconstrued, but I had a lot of friends who did Wiccan stuff, and salt is also used to defend against people. It could be a barrier for just about anything, depending on how you cast your spell. So at the ending, when she starts setting these things up, she has switched the ritual over using the already possessed people. The salt serves as a sort of a line of defense. If anybody crosses that, it overrides her control and they essentially become attack dogs. So it's a barrier spell. It's basically what it is for all those Warcraft nerds and things like that. Okay. So when you break the barrier, the spell is acting autonomously at this point, which means she is controlling them, yes, but she's put them on like an autopilot kind of deal where she doesn't have exactly complete control over them. Because like I said, these are two different types of spells. So to do one, you gotta kind of break away from the other, right? So she binds the parents to the salt, and she binds Paul and James to the other salt downstairs. When Justine and Archer walk into the house, a hilarious fight ensues where Paul and James attack them simultaneously. Now, Paul attacks Justine and James attacks Archer. This is very important because I said to you guys, because we are in supernatural territory, there are still rules. Magic still abides by the laws of nature, okay? If someone is a skinny drug addict, they don't gain super strength. So Archer's and James's fight is fucking hilarious because James is a buck nothing. Now, Archer punches him, and because he does not have whatever you want to call it, the spirit, the spark, the soul, whatever else, right? Because he's an empty vessel, he can wake up. He is not in there. Technically, he's not really conscious. He's just kind of in a state of limbo, right? So every time he knocked him out, he kept on getting up because nobody's home, right? You have to put the person down. And I mean that in either you break something to where they can barely move, tie them up, or, because they are singularly focused. And once again, which is why I can't understand why people don't get the title weapons, right? They are weapons. And think of a gun, a knife, anything like that, right? Doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have an emotional disturbance about what's going on. It doesn't have any awareness or consciousness, right? But the person behind it does. These people are weaponized. They have nothing going on up there. It's empty. All they were is gone. The only way to break it is to go to the source. So now James and Archer are fighting. Fucking Justine and Paul are fighting. And now this is where I kind of feel bad for Paul, because Justine knows she is fucked. Paul is a big dude. He is not going to stop. You can say, hey, stop, blah, 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 whatever. It ain't going to work. And she takes his gun and shoots him in the neck. And even shooting him in the neck, as I said, until the vessel, the body, the machine part is done, he will still come after you. I mean, a lot of people will probably say zombies. It's not really a zombie, but it's more like the inner spark, right? Because they die. They're still human, He would have eventually bled out, but he was strangling her slowly. She shot him in the neck, and she was still struggling, but you could see his grasp like loosening, and then she shoots him in the head. And it's a really sad fate, man. I was hoping my boy Paul would make it out, but the sad truth of it is he was way strong. And if they broke the spell, he probably could have snapped too, because I'll get to the very end and I'm describing why certain people woke up and certain people didn't. But she had to put him down. He was going to keep on coming. So that's taken care of. And now James is over here attacking Archer, gets thrown all over the place, finally gets kicked down. And then Archer goes downstairs and he finds his son. But down there, trying to complete the ritual, is Gladys. Now, Gladys is trying to complete the ritual. And so I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts about this ritual based on everything I looked up, read, and some personal experience. Rituals have proximities in which they can be done. So the scene where she was touching her hands down and meditating, I think it was in the beginning of Alex's POV, she was draining the parents, which is why they were specifically sitting directly under where her room would be. She was siphoning their life from there, but it wasn't enough. So in this case, with the children, their essence is not strong enough to take from another room or whatever else. She has to be in close proximity to get everything all at once. So her game plan is she's going to suck the souls all at once. She's going to take that poor kid Alex and probably use him as an instrument to lure more kids in and continue the cycle until I assume she gets to the peak she wants to get at. I don't know exactly what her goal was. They're unclear about that. But at this point, she's got my boy Archer. He's got the blank eyes, and she's already set up everything because I'm sure she heard the struggle. She knew he was coming, and she prepared the stick, and bada bing, bada boom. And plus, she already had Justine's hair, which, by the way, don't fall asleep if you're stalking somebody. My one complaint, like I said, still a 10 out of 10 movie. So she goes into the room, but our little hero, Alex, she, I assumed, was doing the ritual in order to, I want to say too, she almost probably wanted to take him as an apprentice. She seems very friendly. She was very specific on bloodlines, things like that. She probably would have taught him some of this stuff too, but she had showed him bits and pieces of this ritual. And this kid is very smart. He put it together and learned the nuts and bolts of it. So he takes Gladys's actual strand of hair, and he takes the different things that from the kids. He wraps it up. He uses his own blood, breaks the stick, and now the children are coming after Gladys. Now, why does Gladys haul ass? Those kids, dude, this was probably the scariest part. Dude, those kids were no joke, man. They were singularly focused. And now, when this happened, he now turned her own weapons against her, right? She was manipulating and using the children in order to gain life force. She was using them as a detection system, and now she got sloppy, and now they're being used against her. They beeline it, they rip her apart. And so people say this is a very abrupt ending, but I don't think it is. I think that there is nothing really left, because here's the thing. We got the answer. Gladys is a witch. It was sprinkled throughout the whole thing. And we've got the why. Now, I had to dig deep, and I left link in the description to find out what the ritual was, what the rules were, things like that. But you could pick it up through bits of the movie. And now, why does her death break the spell? Well, because she is the anchor point. So, why everybody snaps out of it? So Archer recovers the quickest. He was under the spell the least amount. When he snaps out of it, remember how I said it takes your essence, whatever it is, it just that zzz sound, and then you're fucking gone. Well, the time length is very important. And this is also in certain things practiced within Wicca and things like that. The length for which you are under the person's trance or their bind or their spell can greatly have traumatic effects. And I'm talking about psychologically, but also, and not to get corny here, but we got to get in the weeds, spiritually. The spirit is as much of a thing as the mind, the body, right? The mind, body, soul, right? And look, I don't care. I'm not trying to get it spiritual. I'm just relating this into what I believe this implies based on what I research and based on how Wicca operates. The essence, the life essence, right? The longer the person is held captive, the longer that thing that makes them is drained, the less likely they are to be able to come back. So, with this abrupt ending, Gladys is done. She is what's called the anchor point. Once the anchor point is broken, there's nothing left. That's it. Wrap it up. Game over. Like, I know people are expecting like this big ass, like, but sometimes and I saw an interview with Zach Cregger, and I agree. He quoted Arkham's razor, right? The simplest point to 2 points is a straight line, right? This is a straight, like, it's a very clever mystery. I fucking love this movie, but it's very straightforward as to what's going on. So the anchor point is Gladys. When Gladys is killed, my boy Paul, R.I.P., he could have been restored to normal because him and also James have the least amount of time, right? So now we're going to work our way based on this theory to the epilogue. You get the little girl's voice, and she tells you what happens. So the catatonic victims, Alex's parents, had to be institutionalized. Let's touch on this first. They were under the spell for at least, and I'm going by a guesstimation off of when the kids went missing, at least a month. She got there. She had been ciphering their energy for, well, she started in like maybe day 2, because day 1 they were fine. She comes at night. Alex gets home. The parents are fucked up. But okay, think about it this way. I'm going to assume, gave it a couple of weeks, right? Because like I said, magic has rules and there is a certain limit. She waited the appropriate amount and realized the parents did not have enough energy. Now, sadly, and once again, this is conjunction. I'm just going based off of the facts that the movie gave me. I think that she had taken so much of their essence, so much of what makes them, and there's a month time skip. So I'm going to assume roughly for about almost 2 months, she had been draining who they were and kept whatever you want to call it, their spirit, their essence, whatever, out of their bodies for so long. By the time the spell was broken, not only do they psychologically have to, cope with what happened, because they fucking stabbed themselves in the face, they bashed their head through a door, they tried to hurt their son. So not only would your mind probably break, and once again, when I say there's rules, consequences, with magic, with specific people, why they say you shouldn't do love spells, binding spells, certain rituals, is because they directly affect the person, their mind, their body, their spirit, right? If you break any one of those, they're done. And sadly, I think that Alex's parents were roughly under this spell for 2 months, and they were broken. Their spirit was probably torn apart. Whatever came back that was left, the mind couldn't reconcile with the rest of it, right? So the engine is still going, but there's still nobody home, right? Because whatever the essence of the person is, right? Whatever they were is gone. There is nothing left of them. They are a husk. Now, there is the theory, and I'll get to it when I get to the kids, but where you can rebuild some of this back up, right? Because we saw Josh Brolin snapped out of it right away. It was like he just went to sleep for a while and then was right back on his mission. But with them, where they would pick up, what they would remember, if they ever got any of that back, they were trapped so long in wherever she had these people's essences, right? Because I told you there was the bell, the zzz sound if you listen. By the way, go see this in IMAX. Great sound design. But anyways, there was that zzz. That was them fucking vacating the building. Now, they're not specific on where the soul goes or where their essence goes or the chi or whatever the fuck you want to call it, but I'm gathering it was in this place and it was there for so long that even breaking the spell, even killing the anchor point, Gladys, it went back there, but it was barely what it was. And because of their age, because they're older, it works kind of like, you get sick and you're older, you don't bounce back as much as you used to. This brings us to the kids. Now, they say some of the kids were catatonic, but they returned to their families and eventually they were able to speak again. Why is this the case? Well, because of the reason why Gladys wanted the children in the first place. 90% of spells I looked up and ritualistic things and things like that, youth is one of the most sought after, one of the most powerful things that you could use to power your spell. So the life essence of these children, the youth of these children, they're still growing and developing, right? And even though it was a month, which is quite a long time, they haven't fully developed yet. They haven't fully grown into what they were going to be. They're considerably younger, right? And so they have a lot of spirit to them. They're very spirited, right? It might take a couple of months, might take a couple of years even. But I think it's safe to say that they will eventually recoup. Now, how much they remember, if anything at all. Remember they ripped poor Gladys apart. Hopefully they don't fucking remember that because they took her fucking face off and her arm and all sorts of crazy shit. But I think the gist of it is because Brolin didn't remember strangling out poor Justine. The gist of it is that this is a traumatic thing that will be with them, but they're not going to remember it. But on some deep emotional level, they will know something went missing. Because, as I said, when you take from something, there is a cost, there is a consequence, and most importantly, the vessel, whatever, suffers very extensively through this whole process, which is why these rituals are super dangerous. And why, even in certain magic practices, it is frowned upon to do any of this kind of magic because even within witch sects, they are very, very, very against blood magic for this reason. There's two very big negative things. Either A, you can hurt yourself because you are donating your own blood. You are giving portions of your life to do a spell. Like, make no mistake, she was so powerful. This control was so powerful because she was putting her own essence into the very spell. That's what makes it so unbreakable. And that's why she's what they call an anchor point being. In order to make the spell work, there is a price. The price she was paying is herself as the center point for the spell. Hence, you kill the center point, the spell breaks. And she is the anchor point for all of the spells, right? She is where the life essence is being funneled. She is where their very being was connected. Once the kids killed her, it severed the connection and the essence went this way. And it went back presumably to where all the other people were, right? The kids, the adults, and things like that. But how much was siphoned and how much returned, that determined who probably spoke quicker, who recovered faster. And as I said, I think the parents, given their age, given the proximity of spell, given maybe even the mental constraints, I think they just broke. And it gives both a hopeful and kind of fucked up thing because Paul died and he probably could have been saved if they would have been able to break the spell quicker. James, I don't know what happened to James. Actually, leave me in the comments because I lost track of what happened to him. He got kicked somewhere, but I don't know if he died or not because Josh and him were fighting. He kicked him into a wall. I think James is all right. Hopefully he gets help. And then, like I said, Archer was only in control literally for maybe like 10, 15 minutes. And then Benedict Wong could have probably been saved if he didn't get fucking smushed by the truck. So, the other point that I wanted to make before I call this a day, the witch. What is she? Where does she come from? Well, kids, fuck if I know. No. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I have pieced together through vigorous work. Like I said, I seen this a week earlier. I've been doing a lot of research. So I'm going to give you guys, and take this with a pinch of salt, unless I fucking talk to Zach Cregger himself and I go, hey, man, I need to know. Nordic god, Aztec, fucking settler, Salem witch. Can you help a brother out? I'm not going to know definitively, but I'm going to kind of give you guys a rough estimate based upon the spells she uses and the way she carries herself. So Gladys in several scenes is seen as using manipulation. She uses manipulation on Andrew to get him to let her in the house. She uses manipulation on Alex to get him to go along with her plan in order to stay under the radar. She manipulates cops, FBI, things like that. Now, you're probably thinking, well, she's a powerful witch. Why is she an old lady? So when we first meet her, and I'm going zigzagging through Alex's perspective here for a second, she's frail and dying. What is she dying of? Now, I've put it together, and based on my research on certain things, and you can check the links in the description where I have linked a great site called the Nexus of Sorcery and the Mystical World of Blood Magic by Colin Larson. According to what I've looked up, and also according to my brief experience within the Wiccan community, so she is a practitioner of blood magic. So, as I said, what makes blood magic different from regular magic? Regular magic uses sigils, casting circles, enchantments, runes, soul stones, things of that nature, even herbs and various plants that are found within nature. Okay? They draw from nature or anchor point, as I said Gladys was. Follow me. So every spell that a practitioner uses needs a anchor point. An anchor point is where your spells are anchored, or a point of origin, right? So most witches or Wiccans or people who practice Wicca will have a talisman, a ring, something on them that is their anchor point for anything that they wish to do, whether it's healing, enchanting, herbal, medicinal uses, whatever. There is something they use as an anchor point. Now, Gladys is sick because blood magic, and why it is so controversial and why it's frowned upon in the Wiccan community, is because you are the anchor point. Every spell that you use, whether it be for good or for bad intentions, you are giving up your life. Now, in the movie, we see her use drops of blood, and you're probably thinking, well, Zod, fuck, man, a drop of blood? She got like how many pints left? That is not the important parts, my friends. Don't look at it as the blood itself. She is essentially dropping bits of her soul into the spell. Depending on how much blood she spills is how much of herself she's putting into the ritual. Now, she mentions to BD Wong or Andrew at one point that their parents have dysentery. Now, anybody who's a history buff would know dysentery is a very fucking old thing. I was looking it up, and I believe it was around the 18th century or so. Terry, hold on. But yeah, it's linked to tuberculosis and things like that. Yeah, it was around the settler days, right? Okay, so that would put Gladys at a very old age. Now, I can't exactly trace, because the movie doesn't give us that much, how far her lineage goes, but she's considered in the movie, a great grandmother, like a great great grandmother. So I assume people did know of her in the family. I assume that the mother knew of her, there was protecting her or something like that. Now, whether or not she presumably has close ties, but not close enough for them to really know her. So my overall assumption is the family have known of her. Maybe they see her as a crazy lady. She waits a couple of generations, they forget, and she comes back, and I'm your great Gladys. My other thing is they just knew, maybe a few of them practiced blood magic, but over the years they got out of it. And by the time we got to this generation, she knew of Gladys, but didn't know what Gladys was into, right? Now, she is weak because when you siphon off soul energy, when you siphon off other people's energy, this is not a permanent fix. And it's why blood magic is considered like very taboo and not used. Because as I said in the beginning of this review and several times, when you take from something, you must give something back. Every spell that she has cast, everything that she uses, she is now taking that energy that she has taken and she is reusing it. Which means that even though she is siphoning a shit ton of energy, right, from the parents, from Paul eventually, and James, she's still using a lot of energy in order to use them as her weapons to finish what her ultimate prize is, the kids. So why are the kids important? Because innocence and youth, according to a couple of things I've read, are the greatest source of energy. They are potential. Their potential energy is what is such an appeal to people who practice the darker arts. It is not what the energy is, but what the energy could be over time. Think of it as, what's the best analogy? She is a car. Now, she got some regular gas, right? Just regular, filled it up quarter tank. But that gas is going to run out. The kids are premium gas. They're the upgrade. You fill that fucker up, you can keep driving, but eventually, one day, down the road, pun intended, you are going to lose that energy. So then once again, you have to restock and replenish the car because it runs out of gas. I'm going to assume she's got to be at least maybe 150 years old, possibly older. I'm not good with age or dates, so don't quote me. I'm going off of if she was theoretically around to know when dysentery happened. I'm going to guess that she's like upper hundreds, maybe 150, 200, who knows, right? Because you'd be 100 years old if you lived through World War I or 2, right? Back in 2000 or whatever, right? Or no, that was, wow, really 2000? Jesus, okay. So you would have to, I would imagine she was a couple hundred years old. Now, once again, we don't get much about Gladys's characters. So has she done this before? She could even be going back further, but I'm going to gather she goes as far as the settler time period. So using all of that and taking into consideration she had children, they had children, the children had children. Maybe she taught her child magic, who taught their child magic. But now we're living in modern times, and magic and all of its glory and splendor has died off. So what do? She is weakened. There is no more belief. There's not a source. It's not like back in the day where, oh, witches, and you had people who had high beliefs. So she needs to create the conditions to give herself the energy to juice back up to be able to do whatever her ultimate goal is. What is Gladys's ultimate goal? What anybody wants. She wants to live. Now, I know some people are going to be like, dude, that sucks. Bear with me. What does anybody want in this world? Think about the perspectives in the movies. People are trying to live their lives. People are trying to do the best they can in a tough situation. Gladys wants to live. She's had a long life, but she doesn't want to die, because whether you're 150, 200 years old, or you are 40 and you get cancer and you're about to punch out, do you want to die? No, you don't want to die. So whether you're thousands of years old or you're 20-something, the one universal thing is that sometimes people can't face mortality. Now, I will refer you to what Zach Cregger said when making this movie. He wrote this script and made this movie after his good friend who had made Steel Mongolias, I believe, had died. And it made him realize the fragility of life. So our antagonist is not trying to rule the world, trying to maliciously kill these people. There's all the evidence that actually she's not trying to do that. She wants to live. She's dying, and she wants to live. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't make her a good person, but it is understandable. She is in no means good. I would wager that for years, given to how she manipulated the cops, Andrew, the principal, and everybody else around her, she's a master at manipulation because of what she does. But at the end of the day, this is a grounded story. She wants to live. That's the end game. That's the goal. That's the ultimate, what is the purpose? She just wants to live. And there's moments in this movie, and this is why I kind of wish we got Gladys's perspective, but at the same time, I understand why not. There are moments when she's talking to Alex, or when she's talking to Andrew, and kind of a matter of fact about things, where you see bits of her humanity. She is not this boogeyman, supernatural monster thing. She is a human that is using very dark arts, but she's still human. How she's using her power, how she's weaponizing her power, that is the evil, right? The basic human emotion of wanting to live is understandable for everyone. But essentially kidnapping 17 kids, bending a town to your will, murdering at least 4 people, that is the evil that she does in order to get to the end goal of extending her life. Now, some could argue, well, she's older, she's lived a full life, why go through all this? What would you go through if you were sick? Right? If you were dying, if you were on your last legs, would you consider it? Now, I can see some people who leave comments or hear some people talking right now going, I wouldn't do that. Are you kidding me? The kids and the Ask yourself what people do to get ahead on YouTube, to get money, to buy food, right? And this is where you can kind of dig into, let's talk about some deeper meanings in this movie, right? Desperation, hopelessness, the struggles of being a person, right? She caused this town pain, which caused this town's nature to be revealed in very different ways. Justine turned to alcohol and fucking a friend she knew. Archer turned to having a singular, driven, one-note person putting his wife and himself into what could be a downward spiral. You see him hurting at work. So when I hear people go, oh, well, the extra stuff, it's all fluff. No, it's not. It's all relative. He is a grieving father, right? The through line is what we do in these extraordinary circumstances, right? Now, I worked my way backwards. Gladys's circumstance is she is dying. What is she doing? She doesn't fucking care about anybody. She wants her life. She takes it from the parents. This is her way of trying to keep it centralized. If I just siphon their energy, then I can just leave this town or whatever. But it's not enough. So she takes 17 innocent kids in order to feed on their life. This causes Archer, who's one of his kids is the missing one, to singularly focus on finding his son, which hurts him professionally and even within the community, within law enforcement, getting tired of him asking about his kid and blah, blah, blah. This affects Justine because the kids went missing on her watch. Everything was normal until one day it wasn't. And she's to blame. Well, we don't know what's going on. We need a target. Boom, Justine. Which drives her to figure out what's going on. But what's the pattern? She cares. She cares too much, and that's evidence, right? Why'd she get fired from the other school? Blah, blah, blah. She got fired because she cares about what she does. Good people, or even people who are kind of good with the best intentions, can do extraordinarily bad things in the sake of trying to right a wrong, trying to fix something. Is it right? Isn't wrong? It's a matter of perspective. That's why we're given 4 different perspectives. From every perspective, it is a person that, yes, the larger mystery is what's going on, but all of the fluff is important because their life experiences and how they are affected is directly affecting the story and the outcome of what the story is going to be, right? So you have Justine, who now 17 kids go missing. She's a pariah. People vandalize her car, so she resorts to alcohol and to drowning her sorrows away in drinking, which then she affects Paul. And I've heard people say, well, Paul's story is useless. Well, what do we know about Paul? Paul is a recovering alcoholic who married a beautiful woman who is obviously the daughter of his boss. But when the kids go missing, and when he runs into James, and we'll get to James, but when he runs into James and he gets this nervous feeling, and maybe he's got AIDS, maybe something happened because he got pricked by a dirty needle, which is a real thing, folks, can happen. Not saying he's right, but I understand the frustration, right? What does he act on? His basic instinct of fuck it, and he has sex with Justine. And then he drinks, and he breaks his sobriety. But her wanting him to drink to loosen up so they can fuck is a consequence. Now, is Justine bad? No. But does her mistake directly impact him, who then impacts something else. Yes, because what happens? Paul is pissed. Paul gets dropped off. He sees his father-in-law, I'm gathering, who knows that his daughter is mad at Paul, probably heard, because remember in Justine's little POV, the wife throws liquor on her and says, I know you fucked him, and I know that you broke his sobriety, right? Every scene has a purpose and a significance, because it's not just about, and everybody says, and this is corny and cliche, but it's the journey, not the destination, right? It's about, yes, magic, witchcraft, blood magic, blah, blah, blah. We went over the nuts and bolts of it, but it's about what people do when faced with extraordinary circumstances, such as death, missing kids, and blame, hatred, depression, grief, right? So Paul is fucking pissed. His wife is going to fucking leave him. He's probably going to lose his job because his father-in-law knows he's fucking around. And on top of all of that, this fucking junkie he told a billion times to not fucking come back is back. And now James is a drug addict. Do I need to run down on all of the things that he's probably fucked up in his life, right? We hear him on the phone wanting to borrow money, saying, lying, I got my shit together, blah, blah, blah. He has a moment where he could walk into the police station, or he could meet Paul by the police station while they're outside and go, hey, I'm not here to rat on you. The kids are in the house. Right there and then, they could have ended the whole thing. But Paul, being so angry and not listening, and this person could have killed him, has to check it out. Doesn't radio it in because it's a junkie. Why should he listen to him, right? This guy got out and he could have helped those kids. But the only reason he decides he wants to help is because he sees the $50,000 reward. Greed. This town wasn't perfect to begin with. And it's why Gladys could so easily prey and manipulate these people, right? Because beneath the veneer of this seemingly perfect suburban town are people with fucked up things going on in their lives, with different morals and sense of right and wrong, right? So James botches that, getting Paul captured and him captured as well. And now we get to Alex, the person who is responsible but is not, because he is a child. The representation of innocence. Now, is Alex to blame? Yes. But let's look at some things up before you come with the pitchforks, right? These kids, the kid who is the sheriff's son is the little shit giving him shit in school. These kids bully and tease and are dickheads to Alex. But when he comes home, his dad goes and is like, hey, what's up, slugger? How you doing, buddy? His mom cares. She says, go clean up your room, Love you, I got dinner ready. So he knows Gladys is evil, but he's a kid. And he just wants to save his parents. So he takes those 17 names and he uses and has Gladys use them in the spell. And he keeps his mouth shut. But then he does something that nobody else is able to do. He sees a teacher. Now, and this flashback is important. There's a flashback where he takes all of the tags and Justine goes to him and she's like, hey there, buddy, how you doing? Whatever. Look, I know you've been going through a tough time, and if you ever need to talk, blah, blah, blah. And when she sees his teacher and the father of the kid in the basement, that's where even a kid knows right and wrong. He could lose his parents. He could lose his own life. But he hears them downstairs and knows if he does not do anything, they will die, his parents will die, and he's probably not going to have a great fate, And despite the fact his parents could die, and they had a bad fate, his parents are in an institution and he gets adopted. And sure, he gets nice parents, but for the rest of his life, he knows a fucking witch came to his house, brainwashed his parents, and they're dead. Now, they're not physically dead, but they're broken. They're gone. Who they were died. When you really think about the end of this movie, and what struck me the second time watching this and really hit me hard, was his parents did die. They died spiritually, emotionally. What they were died. He killed them to save everybody else. He knew by the end that his parents were probably not going to be okay. He was a smart cookie. And he had broken that stick and did what he did, because at the end of the day, is it you save 2 people or you save all of this town, these 17 kids, Justine, Archer, maybe Paul, rest in peace, Paul, right? James was selfish and he was older than Alex. Archer was one-minded. Justine, driven, but good intentions. And her connection and her going the extra mile that everybody had a problem with, thought that I was wrong, she got through to him, which prompted him to realize that his favorite teacher was going to die, and probably all of those kids, unless he acted. And I don't know if he comprehended that he was going to lose them, because you see him hugging. Oh, man, I got choked up watching it. You see him hugging his parents because he knows they're broken. They're gone. And a part of him, I believe, knew that he was going to lose them. And it goes back to the theme of sacrifice, of sacrificing something for another thing, right? And this ties into the blood magic. This ties into everything I've been talking about, right? So let's pull it all together. Magic is about sacrificing. This witch wanted more life. But what is the price for that? Just like, what is the price for people not doing what they're supposed to do? The drug dealer or the addict, and look, I don't blame him. This has nothing to do with his addiction. Well, kind of does. But he was singularly focused on money. The cop was singularly focused, putting out his rage and his issues he created onto a target. Archer was singularly focused on his son. Justine was focused on her kids and a little bit of self-hatred. Why am I the target? What's my issue? I don't know what's going on, right? So a little bit of selfishness there too. But what I love about this is that Alex, despite having the most selfish of reasons, his fucking parents stabbed themselves multiple times. I even think in that moment he knew they might not wake up. But he had to do something. Because sometimes children can see the most basic of answers. Right? Wrong. Mom and dad are going to die. These kids are going to die. My favorite teacher is going to die. What's the right thing? Well, I seen what this lady does, and I want to help. And he does it. Now, Could some of this be tied up to the fact that maybe he feels guilty about taking the name tags? No, fuck them kids. I don't even think he really felt bad about that. Maybe he could have sacrificed those kids. But the teacher, Justine, cared about him. I mean, hell, Archer cares about his son. So this ties back into, too, that everything has a price, everything has a cost, and at the end of the day, this whole thing spiraled out of control from her. This witch tried to control magic that can't be controlled, right? And the witch tried to control the way things happen, but due to this person and this person and this person and this person and all of these factors, which is why she said, we're getting the fuck out of here, right? At the end of the day, this movie, the symbolism of magic and everything else, it is an allegory for death, for life, for control. When you look at Zach Cregger and what he said about writing this, right? And it was on the heels of a friend's death. This has to do with the most taboo magic, blood magic, life and death. You cannot control how much time you have. Hell, I wish there was a way to do it. And by trying to force things unnaturally, right? By going through these unnatural things instead of accepting it, you are inadvertently causing a ripple effect that affects everything. Gladys just hurt the parents, but it wasn't enough. She needed more. Well, 17 kids, but that hurt the community. 2 or 3 people are driven, or 4 or 5, okay, 4 POVs, right, are all driven for different reasons. Selfish, self-centered, good, worried, concerned, driven. But at the end of the day, the point of views are just as important as what the mystery is. Because nothing is fluff. How these people live informs to the decisions they make within this film. And so at the end of the day, I hope I've broken this down to the best of my ability. But I believe, to cap this all off and put a little sweet fucking bow and ribbon on it, the catalyst was Gladys's blood magic. But this revealed what this community, what this suburban community was really like, right? Underneath the perfectly manicured lawns, and this guy knows Joe down the street, and my kid goes to your kid's class in elementary. Look at Alex's POV, right? Those kids were fucking little shits to him. But did they deserve to go missing and Naruto run through the fucking streets? Probably not. But Alex originally did it to save his parents, right? Archer hates Justine because he wants to know what's happened to his kid. Any parent would feel the same way. Justine cares. And God forbid teachers fucking care. You know what? I knew a lot of teachers when I was growing up. And I love how the movie does this, because I can understand that fucking frustration feeling of, why can't a teacher give a kid a hug when they need some support or drive them home? Like, yes, I know we live in a different time. It's not ethical. Really? Or maybe we've lost touch with what makes us fucking human beings. Is there evil in the world? Very fucking clearly demonstrated in this movie. Gladys manipulates and uses dark blood ritual to infect this town, yes. But how people were treating each other before this was allowed it to happen, right? And there's hints of this when they talk about, oh, she got let go from her last job. She got into a fight with someone from the faculty. Well, maybe they were doing some stupid shit and she was calling them out on it because she cares. And her and Archer find the kids because of their determination when Archer realizes that, you know what? She's gone through just as much pain as everybody else. And this swings us back around to why Cregger made this movie, right? Grief, loss. Everybody wants somebody to blame. Just like with the resolution. I've heard a lot of people, either you hate or love this resolution. I think it's fucking perfect. Because life is messy and also things wrap up quickly. They are what they appear to be. Gladys is an anchor point. When she's killed, the spell is broken. How much fucking more of the movie do you want? There's nothing left. You want to see the follow-up and everything else? That's not how life works. I think it's a very, very good ending. I love this ending more than Barbarian. Because with Barbarian, I felt like it was overly done to try to get that last This was very like, Bob's your uncle, you're done. Now, when I first watched this, I understand why some people would be frustrated. But bear with me a second. The simplest answer, right, is always the first one. The easiest way to 2 points, straight line. Occam's razor, right? She is the cause of the issue. They killed her. End of story. There's nothing else. You get the epilogue. Archer is fine. We presume his son woke up. And sadly, Alex's parents aren't the same because they were longer under her spell. Now, if you want to know the nuts and bolts, I went into that, with the soul siphoning, my guesstimations of the time periods. But at the end of the day, it wrapped up because it didn't need to be this spectacular, balls to the wall, crazy, whatever else. You got all that. And I heard people say a thing that they're satisfied, but they still feel the resolution was too quick. I thought it was perfect. Fuck you want? You got your battle. Justine battled Paul. I mean, Gladys is fucking 1,000 years old, right? She got killed by her own instruments. She was her own destruction. That's the fucking point, right? I thought it was perfect. Perfect fucking ending. Now, is there a couple of things we could have done without? Yes. Could you trim the fat just a tad bit? Few things here and there, maybe. But for me, 10. I love this fucking movie. I love this movie. For me, I think it's, especially the ending, is efficient, and it gave me the answer I pretty much figured was coming, but in a way I didn't predict it was going to shake out. And the ending having an abrupt feel makes me like it more on my second watch because I like the fact that it's not trying to over-explain everything, right? And I think the sad part is, especially now with the average moviegoer or whatever else, is they want everything laid out for them, right? Fucking Jurassic World is fucking terrible. If you want a big dissertation, watch one of those movies, right? Watch Jurassic World Afterbirth or fucking the other 900 fucking corporate-made Hollywood bullshit that's been coming out, where they sit there and they stop and they pause and tell you, well, if I get this and I do this, and the villain monologues for 5 minutes. That's not life, and this is based and grounded mostly in reality, where life isn't simple. Life is messy. The answers are sometimes it is what it is. It's like, it's nothing more, nothing less. The answer is the answer you get. And some fucking time, it doesn't make sense. Who comes back? Who starts to talk again? That isn't the point. The point is that a situation happened, these people got together, and they took out that element so that in the future, when they tell this story, there won't be another town that misses 14 kids that maybe die. And that is the point. At the end of the day, we live the life we live. We get to the destination we get to, and we got to be happy where we are. Appreciate the things you have. Value the fucking people around you. At least that's what I took from it. So, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed my very thorough, very comprehensive breakdown. This and long legs are the first time I did one of these, and hopefully I answered most of your questions. I got into the specifics of the ritual. Links in the description if you want to look up the different pages that I looked through and maybe form your own theories in the comments below. Tell me what you think your theories are. And tell me what you thought of Weapons. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you like the ending? Does maybe listening to my 2-hour breakdown help you out and help figure out this stuff in your head for you? And what movie are you looking forward to? Because this was my most anticipated movie, and I can tell you it did not disappoint me. I am very fucking happy. Honestly, I don't think there's going to be another movie that dethrones it at the top spot for my horror movie list this year. To be perfectly honest with you, because this movie spoke to me more than most. And especially with top 10s lists, and especially with horror, because it's just so fucking good these days. It's really hard, but what I lean towards in my tippy top is what speaks to me that year, what I vibe and connect with. I connect with this movie as a father. I connect with this movie as someone who has seen some of these things. As I said, but my prior experiences when I was younger in the Wiccan community, I connect with this on a community level and seeing how suburbs are. And I knew a couple of people like some of these characters, and I connect on this with the fact that this is dealing with losing people, and clearly written by somebody who was trying to come with grips with life, death, and bargaining and the meaning of it all. You can feel it in this movie, and the dread and the sadness, but yet there's a hint at the end of it's going to be all right. And I think if you go back through and watch this again, you can pick up on these subtle nods and details. Hopefully I've unveiled enough clues by going through and pointing out the little things. If I missed something or you have a question about something, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can answer it for you. But I love this movie. I think it's a great movie, and I think you should all go out and see it. My next review is going to be on Wednesday, part 1. God, TV is going to be hard this year, folks. Another banger by Netflix. Jesus Christ, man. Netflix is on fire. Prime has Dexter Resurrections, which is peak Dexter that we've ever gotten, I think. It's right up there with the original seasons. And then I had Reacher earlier, which was just peak action. And, we got The Boys coming back. Like, oh, God, man. It's going to be a rough month. So if my videos are spaced out, it's because I just finished Wednesday yesterday. I've been working on the links that I told you about and notes for this video so I can give you guys my best comprehensive thoughts. And then I'm also working on a quick brief maybe spoiler-ish review of season 2 of Wednesday, but I'm going to try to not ruin as much stuff. But it's still going to be a pretty taxing review. So thank you everybody for watching. Click that like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube things. And as always, remember, there is only one rule here in the fandom zone. Kneel before General Zod.